just want to give you a quick welcome here at the Goethe-Institut today. It's a pleasure to have you here also, like our guests tonight. Thank you for coming and joining us. Why are we doing this as a Goethe-Institut? We always try to be on the forefront of cultural exchange and education. So we were thinking that in a world of rapidly evolving digital things, we think that it's crucial to embrace what is happening, but not just adopt. So this is why we are kind of deeply interested in or invested in exploring what potential has, and today we're talking about artificial intelligence. We have other rounds where we talk about blockchains, NFT, etc. There's also a big project of the Goethe-Institut talking about quantum computing, which is like a totally next level thing that we have also to cope with sooner or later. So because we think it's interesting also for us non-technicians to involve in this discussion about technology, because it will affect us in any way, and we think. And this is why we set up this row of workshops that we're having, that you're also invited to participate. Every fortnight on a Tuesday we meet here and we have different aspects of new technology, and they are more or less hands-on workshops to get to know some tools, because we think it's interesting. You only can judge a tool if this tool is useful for you, if you know it. And it's also not that we think that all the tools that we think, it's not like that what we sometimes hear, that AI is going to help us in understanding or embracing new cultures and new technology. Sometimes it also lets us down on exploring new things, because it repeatedly gives us the same thing that is already known. So I think it's interesting to discuss these pros and cons, to engage in what is happening, and I think it's very important also for people from the cultural field to engage in this discussion. What kind of AI do we actually want to have, because this has a very strong relation in what kind of society do we want to leave, and not leave it only to the technicians developing stuff. Mm-hmm. So this is why the Goethe-Institut, with their mission, with our mission, we are engaging in this field. And now I'm very happy to have you four more experts than I am in this field, already working with AI or not working with AI, or discussing that on your daily basis here, to enlighten us a little bit. We are recording this talk. This is why we're talking into microphones without amplifying it too much, because there's actually not a need in that small circuit that we are. But we want to record it to then in the future also be able to have other people the possibility to listen to it. So I hand over to Anna, who will be our moderator tonight, and she will present herself and the guests that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jana. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to welcome you today, this evening at Goethe-Institut. Thank you for coming, and I want to thank Jana and Goethe-Institut for organizing this event, and together with Taber from Web3Expressão for organizing not only this event, but this event is happening in the frames of a big series of events devoted to art, culture and technologies. And I think that it's super important that these kind of events are happening in Lisbon, where, as we know, a lot of technological events are happening, and a lot of people from technological side, engineers, scientists, and etc. are talking about technology. So we need the voices from the cultural field, from the creatives and artistic perspective to talk about these things. My name is Anna Cidavets, and I work with art and technologies for probably more than 15 years with different perspectives, both as an artist and curator and creative director. And today I'm welcoming you at yet another roundtable about AI, artificial intelligence. Of course, everyone has already heard about artificial intelligence. We hear about it on everyday basis, and I think it's hard to find a person who didn't hear about artificial intelligence or don't know at all anything about artificial intelligence. And actually, not long time ago, like a couple of days ago, we were speaking with my colleagues and we were talking about, hey, but isn't it too much? I mean, there are so many discussion tables and talks and etc. about artificial intelligence. And in truth, if you think about it, if you think in the history back to 1956, and this is actually the year when the term artificial intelligence has appeared. There was the year when it was invented. Actually, if you think about the amount of discussions and talks and roundtables which happened within this half a century already, more than half a century, it's hilarious, isn't it? But nevertheless, and however, I believe that it's important that we have the discussions because this huge technology is developing so rapidly, and actually every new milestone raises new questions. And if we talk about the very beginning in 1956, when the artificial intelligence appeared as a term, there was 10 people, scientists, white males, who gathered in Dortmund, and they invented this term, the technology of their dreams, and they called it artificial intelligence. And mainly, by that time, people were not thinking about ethical problems at all. Moreover, Marvin Minsky, who is actually one of the pioneers of artificial intelligence, he was almost, making jokes when somebody was talking about ethics in artificial intelligence. And now, in 2024, this topic of ethics of AI became quite a mainstream. Indeed, we have quite a lot of discussions. We have a lot of projects also funded by big corporations, which is interesting. Big corporations put the topics of algorithms and ethics in the papers, in the conferences, etc. And it's also one of the questions, because by this they sometimes whitewashing this new idea of ethics and politics. So today, I hope with my colleagues and the brilliant participants in this field, we will discuss this multifaceted and uneasy, let's say, topic about ethical use of AI, about biases which we face when we are using AI in the creative field. Of course, we will not cover everything because we are limited in time, and of course, this topic is endless if you think about it. But we will try to touch the most important things, and we will try not only to criticize, but also to find some solutions, to not to be only critical, because I think it's essential. So let me introduce the participants of today's discussion table, and with great pleasure, I would like to introduce you introduce Megan Amari. She's a designer, and her main focus in computational design, and she's AI researcher and also workshop facilitator. Megan has led a lot of workshops, and quite often, as I could see from the record of the workshops, quite often the topic of AI was on the table and was discussed at your events. So then I would like to introduce Miguel Carvalhos. He's a professor of design at the Faculty of Fine Arts of University of Porto. He's artist and researcher on computational art, design and aesthetics. And Miguel has also written several books and quite a lot of articles on the topic of computational design and algorithmic art. And among them, he's the author of the book Artificial Aesthetics, Creative Practices in Computational Art and Design. And I hope we touch this topic a bit during this discussion. And also his recent book is Art and Computation. And then I would like to introduce Tiago Sigorello. president and editorial director of Gerados. This platform is an independent platform for journalism, culture, and education. And I think and I believe that being on the frontier of the current agenda, of course, you guys in Gerados pay a lot of attention also to the topic of AI and how it's been used in modern society. So let's dive into our topics of today, which is ethics and politics of AI and how we use it in creative field. And I would like to start with quite a casual question, actually. Could you say what is your personal relationship with AI? How are you using it on your everyday basis or in your professional life? Did it change actually anything crucially in your life? Who wants to start?
AI changed my life. AI changed my life. I use it as a creative, thinking partner, a collaborator that's always there. It's helped me get unstuck a lot. I'm often overwhelmed with several ideas, and I can get stuck in overwhelm or perfectionism, where AI can take my intention and put it into action. It also fills the gaps for, where I might lack expertise or even energy that day to complete the task. So, it's definitely helped keep things moving and my work fluid.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I don't have that kind of relation still, but for me, I think that I started with a relation that is very in the sense of a cultural thing. So in the beginning, my relation with AI came from movies, came from Blade Runner or 2001 or even the recent movie, or came from books like 1984 or other books of this kind. And so it's interesting that the arts and the cultural space anticipate a little bit this problematic, these things. There are things that the cultural can think that are so absurd that they turn reality. It's interesting to me to think about it. Then I started to look at it in the way that there is like a presence of machines in intelligent spaces. Something like a machine that wants to beat a guy that it's the better player in chess, or the better player in Go, a Chinese game that is more complex than chess. So there is a lot of stuff that happened in my life, not in a professional way, that started my relationship with AI, and then of course with ChatGPT, everything turned upside down.
And so do you use ChatGPT?
Of course, I use
your articles.
Not writing my articles. I can talk about that a little bit more, but of course there are a lot of tools that are present in our work. We are an independent and non-profit organization, so we always looking for efficiency, always looking for having lesser costs. So there are a lot of tools that we use that can help us in that field. But we have this kind of dichotomical relation. So for one side there is a thinking about the dangers and the perils and the ethics, and from the other side we have this very efficient way, very practical way to look at AI, with a lot of tools that we can nowadays use, like ChatGPT, but other tools, like a lot of tools related to video or to audio enhancing, a lot of tools related to that. They are very useful on our daily basis.
Yeah, I can imagine. So Miguel, of course, I can imagine that you deal with AI on the at least academic level quite a lot, because you are one of the researchers, which is a prominent researcher in terms of development of the algorithmic thinking and creativity. Something has changed in the volume of the microphone. So
AI will resolve it for sure.
Okay, thank you, AI. So maybe you could share with us also some briefly your insights, and also what I'm especially interested, how are you using AI in the practical level, not only on the theoretical one?
Okay, so it's hard to say, because it depends a lot on how exactly you define AI, and AI is kind of a moving target, right? You mentioned 1956 and Minsky and McCartney and all the other people back in the day, and a quote by John McCartney that I like to use with my students is that AI is something, I'm paraphrasing, is something that's in the past, because as soon as something works, it's not AI anymore. You don't call it AI, you call it technology. You call it something, but not AI. AI, back in the 50s and the 60s, up until a few years ago, was an idea, was a utopic idea, right?
A dream.
Sorry?
A dream.
Yeah, yeah. Nowadays, very often we call AI to something else. We call AI to, generative AI, LLMs, and those systems that are based on machine learning, but that add something others besides machine learning. So, on one hand, I could build arguments for having no changes in my life due to AI. If I think about machine learning I use a lot. Everyone uses machine learning a lot because it's everywhere. We don't even notice it's there. We do Google translations, we do grammar checks, we navigate on maps, we do a million things, and ML is there. It's inescapable because it's ubiquitous for a while now, for probably a couple of decades now, and it works, and it's very, very useful. Gen AI, on the other hand, is a different beast. It's a more complex thing. If we're talking about GPT, OpenAI, and the likes, I could say I almost never use them. Okay, I work with those technologies in particular contexts, even practical contexts like artistic production, but I do not work with them, and I try to avoid them. I honestly try to avoid them in my everyday life.
Is it a struggle to avoid them?
No, it's actually pretty easy. It's a matter of knowing where your boundaries are and knowing which technologies you're using, and that's one of the things I do a lot, in my academic, side, because it's part of my job. It's to be hyper aware of the technologies one is using at any given point, and it's discussing, critiquing those technologies with my students. So it's very easy not to use generative AI. I have, of course, many concerns when it comes to teaching. It's a very fluid field where one needs to always be aware of how students may or may not use them, how it may, seep into the students' everyday lives, and it's important to be quite on top of that. Maybe we can explore that later. But in my personal work, I use ML a lot. AI, I try to avoid.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Thank you. And actually, it's quite interesting because you touched this topic of conscious use of AI tools and unconscious, which we face a lot, of course. As you said, we are quite often completely unaware on our everyday basis that we are actually using them. And following this, I would like to ask actually Megan, who is really consciously using AI in her everyday practice, and actually, as you said, all kind of artificial tools has changed your professional approach to what you are doing. So actually, I'm interested in the topic of, in this regarded topic of originality and authenticity. As we know, when it comes to the artists and art, every artist wants to be original and authentic. This is like the core of the artistic production. And so what about AI-generated artworks? How do you feel this notion of originality and authenticity has changed with this new level of artistic production with the use of AI tools?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, authenticity and originality has always been central to artistic expression, and I think those terms are evolving. In the case of artificial intelligence generating art, I would say that it comes down to intention, human vision, and how creative you can be with those tools. And with that, using it paired with artificial intelligence, these powerful tools, you can create new worlds, new expressions, new things that we would have never imagined, and that's what in AI we call hallucinations. Hallucinations is when AI generates something that's pretty surreal, but sometimes can be passed on as real, which I think is creativity.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I can imagine that you probably approach AI as a kind of a new tool in your practice, isn't it?
Not quite. I mean, if I go back and redefined it, maybe generative AI more so, but AI in general, no. With machine learning, I was in computational design. Working in wood shops, I operate CNCs. I use virtual reality to show my work. I have a background in interior architecture and furniture design, so I use machine learning quite a bit, in AI to an extent, but more on the terminology, just more generative AI using that term more recently kind of creates a whole other.
But what I also find interesting is to keep on, with this perspective of development of the artistic creation within the usage of these new tools, regardless of what we say, actually what we witness now, I would say it's quite different to what we have used when we talk about, the classical, let's say, way of creating art, because basically everything, either it's an artwork or a sound piece or a writing piece or a poem or whatever, what is created with the help of AI tool, it's not created completely from scratch, isn't it? So it's a result of a certain manipulation of a certain database and algorithms based on the data sets, based on machine learning. So I'm actually wondering, are you using Stable Diffusion or Midjourney? And if you do, are you using prompting? And if and when you are using it, do you refer to do you include a certain style of a certain artist or a designer to help actually AI to hallucinate, as you say?
Right. Yeah, that's a big debate question if you use in the style of. I can't say I do. Maybe when I first used it out of curiosity to see what the technology was capable of, but now that I've been using it for a while, generative AI, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, that isn't interesting to me. For example, in Midjourney, you can use /define as a command, and you can put your inspirational photo in there, and it will generate 4 different paragraphs of key terminology that it pulled from that image. So if I put, let's say I was really inspired by an image of Zaha Hadid's architecture, this corner of a building, and instead of just like my human self would be like, oh, this is cool, and maybe I am inspired by that, but with my AI integrated process, I'll take that image, find out what the key terminology is associated with it, and sometimes it'll bring up different things, different architects, different poets, different locations. You know, I'm learning about parametric design, exoskeletons, things that I would have never like really noticed before, and then I can take that and start to blend different, maybe contrasting ideas together to create something completely different.
Yeah, that's interesting. So actually, you, as far as I understand, so you are trying to avoid to use certain names, and instead you use actually the tags which are associated with the style of the certain names and artists and architects, which is quite interesting because it comes to the topic of labeling and how actually the data sets which are being used by AI tools are being created. There was a very nice and amazing story about Polish artist Greg Rutkowski. Maybe you've heard about it, and he was, you know, like an illustrator making fantasies, illustration in, you know, a bit like cyber style, and actually suddenly his style became a super hit in this new world of prompting, and actually even not, and exactly the case which you are describing, that even if his name is not there explicitly in the prompt, but his style became so popular that actually people started to overuse his style. Basically, as far as I understood, he became more famous than Picasso by his style, and he was not aware about it for quite some time, and then he found out that actually internet is full of images which are actually mimicking his artistic style. Imagine you wake up one day, you open internet, and then you become famous, but it's not you, it's somebody else who has made all these pictures, but with the use of your name inside the prompt. Which is, I find it as an interesting, thing. What should we think about it? How should we deal about it? Of course, now I'm talking about the copyright issues, because obviously OpenAI and big companies which are using AI in different ways. And of course, I'm using the expression AI now as a general term. We don't go to this, precise scientific terminology now. So, what do you think? What should we do? Because, like for example, with Greg Rutkowski, he had sued Midjourney and OpenAI, and he managed to forbid them to opt out. But the problem is stayed because the large language models, they already have this data. You cannot just erase it. Well, you can theoretically, but it's super technically difficult. So, what do you think? How this problem of copyright, which is really big now, because a lot of data, a lot of pieces created by different artists, being fed to the neural network and large language models to train them to become better algorithms, to become more diverse in the following ability of these tools. So what should be done? Should we forbid actually? Should we forbid to use the whole data set of existing artistic heritage? Or should there be regulations, like, for example, recently there is a regulation which allows artists to opt out if they find that the name is being used in the training models, but still it's not perfect. What is your opinion about it? I know it's difficult, but
Yeah.
I'm sure that every of you has a certain opinion about it.
Yeah,
Miguel, I
well,
think you want to-
I'm not a lawyer, but so I'm not specialized in that. But I would guess that maybe not indiscriminately using all information to train models is a good start. Or what do I mean with this? Maybe we shouldn't assume that all human creation is up for grabs and that everything that is online can be used to train models. Maybe that's a good point.
And how do we do it?
You know, every art is derivative, obviously, but what a human does is not what a large language model does. We do not reduce all information. Oh, okay, now it's me having weirdness with the audio. Maybe an LLM reduces, compresses all the information that it has access to. A human obviously doesn't do that. So maybe, yes, there should be regulations. There should be not opt out, but actually opt in. Maybe when someone trains a model, they should actually license the data they use. They should pay people. They should assume automatic copyright of everything and not the opposite.
But then should we start from the scratch? Because
Yeah.
imagine...
That's the point.
You really think
Yeah.
so? Okay. Yeah.
It's as simple as
we
that,
will not
because-
have ChatGPT anymore, we will not have Midjourney, we will not have
We
anything.
won't have it trained on information that is not licensed.
Okay, but then let's imagine the situation that... what about Zaha Hadid?
What about her? She's
Dead. Exactly.
She led the AI
So everyone who is dead
revolution.
is not in the database to train AI. So we are lacking the whole history of... that's interesting. Can you a bit explore this more?
Yeah, I can
Let's
talk
start
a
from the
little
beginning.
bit about this. This is a very difficult subject, of course, and there are advantage of using AI tools nowadays that come from this learning, from taking this amount of data that is everywhere, and we have to think that if we want in somehow AI to help us, because there is a possibility that AI could be very useful in all kinds of fields to the humankind, we have to think about how to regulate. I think the question it's to have like a midterm, something that makes sense and to regulate. I think that we are in the beginning of this discussion. So 5 years ago, most of us, at least I speak for myself, didn't heard anything about AI for sure. So we are still in the process of trying to learning what it is. Even in the creative field, in the cultural community, I find a lot of people that are enthusiastic about AI. Some people are critical, of course, but a lot of people are enthusiastic. So they find in AI a lot of tools that help us being creative. So how do you define the proper line in this? I don't know. I think that probably we'll go to a place. I remember, as you know, Gerados is a media outlet as well. So like 10 years ago or something, a lot of influential media outlets started to pressure some companies like Meta and Google and so on to have the proper compensation because they was using the news that they produce. And they got there. Some arrangements were made. So these companies, like the large media companies, like New York Times or The Guardian or the Washington Post or whatever, were compensated. But the rest of us, like Gerados, won't be compensated at all, and will in the future. It's impossible to be. And I think probably in the future, in the near future, being like in a pessimist way to look at it, I think that probably some artists, some great artists, some great cultural institutions, some organizations with power, probably they have something to discuss or to influence these organizations that produce AI, and probably they will be compensated in some way. But the rest of us, I think we should pressure public organizations, the public state here, for example, in Portugal. But I think that we have to think more than that, like in a European level or even in an international level, to have proper regulations that affect every of these organizations.
Yeah, Miguel, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a note about copyright, because the laws exist, and the laws also take into consideration, they have expiry dates. So Zaadi has not been there for long, but Picasso has, and some of Picasso's work is now in public domain, right? So history is not forgotten necessarily, but we should just not assume the opposite of that when we train models. And that brings us to far more complex questions.
Let me just add a thought. It's in this field, and when you have a new technology, it's usually people think about auto-regulation. I'm not a great believer in auto-regulation, so I'm not trusting these guys to regulate what they produce and to regulate what they earn. So we have to have strong regulations institutions, and it's very difficult to think about it. It's very difficult to think about, in the case of the states, where these companies can help people get elected and define the regulations afterwards. So it's very, I'm a little bit pessimist in this kind of area, but well, let's see.
Yeah, Megan.
Yeah, I'm also really interested in international solutions versus individual, copyrights versus, community-based solutions like global digital rights, universal income, or more of AI platforms that when you engage with it, you also receive some of the royalties and building the machine. And otherwise, we're really privileged in Europe with GDPR. We have the right to be forgotten, where you can have all of your data extracted from the internet, which I understand is not perfect. Or you can poison the data with glazing or cloaking, and you can even have the University of Chicago do it for you. Or you can look into blockchaining your work and receiving royalties if you embed it in the meta file. But there's a lot of solutions like that, and I think there should be rights to opt in or opt out. You can opt out in Meta with Facebook and Instagram, where you can ask to have your data removed and not have them train their AI models on your data as well. So you have these options, right? But there are so many people that don't have those options and are crucial in what is building our creativity collectively. There's so many people that wouldn't have the privilege, the literacy, or the technology, or the European Union to protect them. And so then
Why only European Union? Should we have a world institution actually issuing these regulations and law? And how do we make actually big corporations, to follow these regulations? Because it's them who are throwing, milliards of dollars and euros into these technologies. So who should pay for this too? So it's very interesting and very multifaceted problem, and I agree with Thiago that we can probably only talk about it on a theoretical level now, and I am also a bit pessimistic, but it's all very interesting what can be the solutions, because until now, even though there are already quite a lot of regulations which have been discussed, which have been implemented, and etc., still we have all these issues, and still we are at this point of development of AI, which is super biased and which is violating the copyright issues all the time. But then, what about bottom to top initiatives? What about artists and creatives taking the action into their hands? And actually, as we know, there are already quite some initiatives in this field, actually fighting with the injustice, with this algorithmic injustice, let's say. And I would like to mention, because I'm coming a bit from cryptography and hacktivism, so I'm really interested in the topic of this algorithmic resistance and hacking and fighting injustice. Recently, some developers and together with the artists has developed several tools. One is called Nightshade, and another one is called Glaze. I think so. Yes, Glaze. And these two, what it does is it gives, it messes around with the pixels of the picture of a visual in such a way so that human eye is not noticing it. We cannot really see that something has changed. But for the algorithms, for the machines, it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. So this is called data poisoning. It's a bit similar to steganography approach in cryptography. When you hide something in the less important pixels inside the picture or sound or words or poetry, and which cannot be detected by the human, but for machines it makes a great difference. And by this, for example, there is a possibility that when you draw a cat, you alter the pixels this way that for a machine learning algorithm, it approaches it as a dog. So imagine that, and actually a lot of artists, now everyone can use it, and a lot of artists, I've heard from my colleagues and artists that, hey, but now I feel very confident when I'm posting something on internet. I'm absolutely sure that I will be protected from big companies to use my creative artwork in their data sets to teach the products. What do you think about it? Because as you can imagine that this tool could actually be used to compromise data in big levels, and then we have all the systems which are based on AI now completely fucked up. What do you think about that kind of initiatives of, hacking the way?
Adversarial attacks are interesting, or data poisoning, to put it in your terms. But, if you think that every artist, or if you propose the idea that every artist should do that, then you're fundamentally shifting the role and the mission of artists. You're turning them into something else. You're turning them into, actually, you're turning them into functionaries of the companies. You're putting them at work for OpenAI or the other companies because you're making artists spend more time and energy in poisoning their data than on creating new things.
But they're not doing it by themselves,
Yeah, they are, because, no, because what that may lead to is an arms race. Because obviously, if you poison the data, someone else or someone will find ways to unpoison it. And that has happened to every adversarial attack and to most cryptography. Not all, luckily, because we still depend on it. So you develop ways to encrypt information, to stenograph it.
Stenograph.
Sorry. And on the other hand, people that need that data will find ways to decrypt it. It's inevitable because they have more resources than artists
with a
do.
new approach, so it will be a race of
Exactly.
tools and approaches.
So that will lead us to an arms race. That is not in artists' interest, I think. So I am a big believer on bottom-up approaches to this, okay? I am a believer in top-down legislation, ruling at the European level or broader than that. But I think that perhaps the way is on developing an ethical awareness of the tools, developing strong criticism of the tools. Not just with artists, that's my job as an educator to some point, but with the broader population, educate people about what these things do and how they do what they do, because I may be seeming a bit overly critical, but I'm not a Luddite by any means. These technologies are super interesting. What's not interesting is the business model of the people running them. Okay? That's the problem.
And what should be the business model?
Oh, I
to
don't
make
know.
it work?
I don't know, but the business model starts from some assumptions that need to be questioned in the first place. For instance, the assumption of general AI, the assumption that a model needs to be able to do everything. Okay, that's very problematic. Another one is the assumption that, say, artificial intelligence needs to think as a human, needs to act as a human. That's very problematic too, right? We don't question them. Our job as artists, also as designers, but that's a slightly different topic. The job of artists is also to create narratives about these things, is to critique them through their artistic practice, right? So that's a starting point, is to critique them by not using the technologies when they think that the technologies are ethically problematic, for example. And that's why I don't use OpenAI. It's not because I dislike it, it's because I find it ethically very troublesome.
Anyone wants to add to this topic?
I agree with Miguel in relation to the data poisoning tools. I think that it's interesting, and I'm all favor about guerrilla and trying to overcome the great powers. But I think it shifts our attention to the real problems, and the real problems is try to pressure the public state or the great companies to have real regulations, proper regulations that really work. So this, I think it's myself probably I would be the guy that could be behind one of these kind of tools, but we have to think about in a broader way. And I think it's more useful to have time spent in pressuring that doing these things like this.
Or you can just wait for them to go bankrupt. So,
yeah. Just
they will not necessarily. They will eventually run out of VC money, and they will run out of use cases for the technology.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's it leads us. Yeah, thank you for your opinions and considerations on the topic. I think it leads us to another question, another problem in our talk today. Well, I think that if we let's take this road that we need somebody to regulate it. We need a global regulative institution. Wow, I'm already afraid of, in truth, because it sounds a bit like, it reminds me something, dictatorship. I didn't say this word. Okay, So let's imagine this. So then probably first we have to start with actually pointing out what are the AI risks, what is the framework of the potential harm and of the potential risks which AI can bring to the society. And actually MIT a couple of years ago, they have created a database, and this is the first comprehensive review of AI risk frameworks. And they really gathered the AI risk repository, where they really gathered all the possible ways how AI could develop and which risks and dangers it could bring potentially in the future to the society. I think they made a really huge work, and they actually published it like a year ago or something, so it's super new. And actually, among other things, and in the first place, in the risk taxonomy, let's say, the scientists put discrimination and toxicity. And here we come to another problematic. As we know, Midjourney, ChatGPT, OpenAI, and other AI tools, they are censoring. They're censoring and filtering the content. There are lists of banned words which you cannot use while you are making your prompt, or which you cannot use while you are talking to ChatGPT. And actually, it's a huge list of banned words, which is now implemented into all these tools. And you can find there, because it's a very complicated task. How you make this list of the words which are banned to use, but at the same time you want to be democratic. You want to let people use their creativity and etc. and etc. Like, for example, among these words, there are more innocent ones like pleasure or gods or surgery. You cannot use them. So then, who should be the regulator? Who should create this filtering and censorship and etc.? And of course, there is a big problem of violence appearing from, or pornography or other stuff which is appearing with the usage of this word. So we need regulation also here. But then, where is the borderline between censorship and controlling for the better? Let's say regulating for the better of the humans. Who is in charge of this? Who should be in charge of it? Huh?
It's a very good question. It shouldn't be the companies, that's for sure. Because the current censor lists or the banned words lists are created by the companies.
Of course.
And the rationale is not public, right? So, who decides, that female nipples are bad, but male nipples are good?
And who should decide it?
I have no idea. Well,
I don't know, but I think that we are talking about first another way of politics, looking at politics. So are we thinking about capitalism? Are we thinking about, so we have to, the ideal, we can talk about the ideal. The ideal is to have a global organization, not just an European one, a global organization that take a look at this. But is this possible? Is it going to be like an organization that always looks at some idea of censorship without knowing the proper culture of each community? I think it's very difficult to understand that. But for me, there are at least two levels that we can think about. One level, it's the legal level. So there are rules, there are laws, and we have to abide them. So if you're in Portugal, there is laws against discriminating people. We can't have anything discriminating people in these kind of companies or social networks or whatever. And so the first thing is to abide the laws. The second thing, there is a difficulty to draw the red line. It's impossible to draw the red line. We think about that a lot in Gerador, and it's very difficult to think in a line that differs the good from the bad. But if you are a company, you don't need to be a company related to cultural or to media or whatever. You have to present like a manifesto of the way that you relate to AI. So what's the way that I relate to AI? Mm-hmm. And people that use our services, it doesn't matter in what kind of fields we are talking about, they should have access to that manifesto. We use AI in this way. So we use AI in all the process of the products that we do. We use AI here and here in this way, in this sense. I think that this should be something that people can see, can read, and people, because of that, can choose the proper company to engage with. Mm-hmm. So, okay, this guy are more open to AI, a more AI-free thing. Okay, I'm into it, so let's engage with this company. This company is more reserved. They have more thoughts about what the perils of AI are. So I'm more like this. I'm going to use the service of this company. But these two things, these two levels, the law one and the manifesto one, they are possible, I guess.
Yeah.
The rest, it's very difficult to imagine.
One short note, some universities are already demanding theses to have disclaimers about the usage of AI, explaining exactly how ChatGPT and other tools were or were not used. Right, and that transparency is a good start.
Yeah, I think that you will see in the next years or next months a lot of media outlets doing the same. We have to have Gerador it still haven't presented one, but we are talking about it. But we have to present. We have to the people that use that read our papers, that use our services, have to know the way that we relate to AI.
It's quite an interesting direction of the thought, because it leads us to the topic of labeling. Should we and as you probably have noticed recently, yes, even Instagram, isn't it, implemented this new feature. When you post something, it asks you, is it AI generated? And then you have to either tickle the box or skip it. And obviously, then it comes to the responsibility of every user, whether I'm labeling what I'm posting as AI generated or not. So there are a lot of dimensions of also, because what they are talking about is the labeling. And of course, then there is the question of responsibility of every company, but not only of every company, but every user. And as we know, every user is different. Every user has different intentions, and etc. I remember this in the early days of Midjourney. One of the it was so new that actually big search engines like Google, they were not prepared for this. I call it Edward Hopper case. I see that you probably remember it. There was a moment. Edward Hopper is an artist, is an American artist, and his style was also being used in the prompts of different people a lot of time. And then at a certain point, when you Google Edward Hopper, who has died obviously already, then Google was giving you on the first page, on the first result of the search, it was given an image generated by Midjourney with a prompt including Edward Hopper in the prompt. And then here it comes the question about, and of course, it was a big scandal, and then the question of how should we deal with it raised. Because if you think about it, only within the last a couple of years, we have produced such amount of data, such amount of visual data too. We have a new heritage. we have a new heritage which is becoming, more in scale than we used to have before. What should we do with it? Is it really a question of labeling? Will we really save our new world with labeling, or what can be the solutions here?
Mm. Well, go on. You first.
So it's very difficult to think about this kind of things to label AI content. I think it's nowadays, for me at least, I'm more a user of AI that I'm not related within an academic field or a developer. I have some ideas that I'm using AI when there is a company that presents themselves as an AI producer, but I don't know what is the AI technology in other services. I really don't know. I don't know if Meta or whatever, a TV or something is using AI. So it's very difficult to define what is AI content. So trying to think about labeling AI content, it's difficult because we can't define correctly what's AI content. And even if we can define, there are some things that probably doesn't deserve this. Like, for instance, Google or Apple, I can't remember, in the last few weeks, they presented a technology in their mobile business that you can take a photo for a group or by yourself, and that includes the guy that is taking a photo. So usually you are in vacations with someone and you want to take a photo of the two of us, you have to ask a third person to do that. So there is an AI technology that takes a photo of you, then you are the one that are taking the photo, and it appears in the photo, in the image, you are there.
It deep fakes you.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's amazing.
That's amazing. So, but it's really important to classify that as AI content. It's really, really important. I don't know. Another example. Let me just give this example. So, I asked GPT to write a script for a film, for a movie, and then I direct that movie entirely without any help from AI. Is this a content produced by AI? I don't know. It is? Well, in the process, there is AI. And everything that we will do in the next years, in the process, there will be AI. In some part, there will be AI. There will be AI in education. There will be AI everywhere. So I think it's very difficult to define what's AI content. But if we are talking about media outlets, we can talk about that later, it's different. I think that media outlets have to have some kind of labeling that they are regulated or not regulated. And if they are regulated, they have to...
What do you mean regulated?
Regulated because to be a media outlet, a proper media outlet, you have to apply to regulations. So we are a proper media outlet and we have to abide to some regulations. There is an entity here in Portugal that obliges to do some kind of things. We have to do that.
Legally
I have to
forced
legally
to
do
check
that.
and stuff
But
like that.
if you can be another company, just produce news and share it in the social networks. But they are not regulated. They are not obliged to do nothing. We are. So maybe we can label this kind of companies, these kind of organizations, the one that are into regulations. Maybe these organizations could be labeled to differ from the ones that don't have these obligations. But it's difficult to think about content.
Yeah. The thing about Instagram, for instance, asking you to label or to flag your image as AI generated. It's funny because I didn't see it in the same terms as he did. I see it maybe in a cynical way as a way for Meta to understand which images they should filter out of training the new models. Because
it's a nice twist.
That is a problem that these politics or these business models have been having, which is they're starting to not be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, to separate human-produced images from AI-generated images, and they are starting to train the new versions of their models in synthetic content. So they are making sausages out of sausages, so to speak, which is problematic. It's distorting the quality of the data. So that's why they want us to filter that out. It's not because of any ethical concerns. Right?
It's a nice twist. I actually didn't think about it, but probably maybe you are right, because indeed, formally they do it because they need to be the new regulations, which are, and by this they beat whitewashing that, look, we are following the regulations. We are asking people to label what is AI created and what is not, and by this they take off the responsibility from themselves actually for this kind of content, but possibly that it's also a way to train the new models. Actually, the more we talk, the more problems we raise, and it doesn't really seem that we can really, which is a pity, we should solve all this problem this evening, huh? Why we don't? So, but actually, I think we are running a bit of time, and I would really like to propose to, before you ask your questions, and I hope that you have a lot of questions for all the participants, I would like to ask you the final question about the future, of course, and about your perspective of the future. After this conversation which we had, and we were quite constantly diving into this, sea of problems and issues and etc. Do you still feel yourself as a techno-optimist or a techno-pessimist? Are we going to live a pitiful and miserable future with all the algorithms and the AI and corporations taking over us and humans and democracy and etc.? Or we will find a way with technologies and by technologies how to make this world better? I would like to...
Well, I can start.
Yeah, please.
So I'm both.
Okay.
And I think most of the answers that are like black or white, it's difficult to choose one. But in this case, I have a lot of optimistic thinking about the AI power to discover solutions in a lot of fields like health, justice, or other fields that it's impossible right now for us with the tools that we have to reach some solutions. But in a lot of other fields, like the ones that we were talking about, artistic ones, the ones related to media, for instance, to the idea of truth, I'm a bit more pessimist. So it's in some way, I think that this could be helpful, very helpful. In the other way, I think that this will be a problem. And I'm not talking about in the 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, I read an article by Yuval Harari.
Yeah.
He's very aware of the perils around AI. Well, it talks about, we will not dominate this technology, so in the future, this technology will dominate us, and are we doing the right steps to correct that? And I think it's a a view, a very interesting view, a catastrophic view, a movie's view, because we see a lot of movies ending this way. But I don't know, is that possible? Can we find a solution between ourselves to regulate properly the AI? Is the AI trying to learn by themselves and trying to be the most important being in this planet? I don't know. But I'm optimistic in the other side.
You're more optimistic.
I'm both.
I'm sorry. You have to take only one side. I'm sorry.
It depends on the fields.
Yeah, but of course, there is no black and white, and of course, this question. Of course, I'm imagining that all of you will answer that you have both sides, but. Still, try to imagine that. Try to imagine the extreme. When you are thinking about the future, are you thinking about it as a dark apocalypse or not?
I don't know. There is.
You're not thinking about the future.
No. I'm thinking about when I take a look at the future, if it's possible to take a look at the future. I think that maybe we will find a cure to cancer. Maybe. I think it's.
So we have a hope.
This is a probability. There it's. I think it's very probable that we will find, with the help of AI, cure to a lot of diseases. But at the same time, will AI, if it's not well regulated, be the one that take care of us in other aspects? Maybe so. So I'm not sure. I'm
Okay.
just.
Yeah, I wonder, Megan, about your opinion. As you said in the beginning of our meeting, the AI tools really changed also your artistic perspective. And as far as I understand, you are enjoying this change in a way. Of course, there are dark sides, etc. So do you think we will find a way how to coexist with these new possibilities which AI brings us, and with the new possible dangers which it also brings us?
Yes, of course. Of course, like you're saying, good and evil always exist. Life and death will always be happening at the same time. And I'm sure both realities will be existing at the same time for certain maybe groups of people. My hope, if we get it right, is that everyone kind of has, I guess, I'm a techno-optimist. Yes, I think if we get it right, we could have a future that's more like a Star Trek society.
Yeah.
And on the way, we'll have, these Black Mirror scares. Mm-hmm. But I think we'll pivot and regulate and get it right. And the people will be active. We just need to stay engaged. Mm-hmm. I'm an optimist, but I'm not naive. I teach in my workshops lots on ethics and theories and ways to protect yourself. And of course, it shouldn't all be on just us alone. But we need to hold governments, societies, companies accountable. But I do believe we're all here talking about it on our free time, and we're engaged, and I think we can get it right and fight for a future that is good for all.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, actually, I was using this word techno-optimist and techno-pessimist, of course, a bit exaggerating, and if it's provoking you, of course, it's a bit, like the extreme level. But at least, I'm curious whether you are more feeling optimistic or pessimistic about the technological future, and especially in creative field.
Okay, so generally speaking, I can say I'm a techno-optimist. I mean,
so
I'm also
techno-optimist and
but this comes with caveats. Okay, so I am. So generally speaking, I was very influenced by McLuhan growing up. We ourselves are technological and artificial, so obviously technology is a force for good ultimately. When it comes to culture and art, intelligence and creativity are traits of computational things. They are intelligence and creativity, depending on how we define it, are things that computers do. right? They inevitably manifest in a bunch of contexts. And because of this, they, of course, have the potential to augment our intelligence and our creativity. Paraphrasing Michael Joyce, I am of two minds when I work with my computer. I feel my mind expanded, right? Even more so when I'm connected to the internet, which I'm not currently. So my mind is not at its full speed, so to speak. But because these things are so ubiquitous and pervasive, we need to learn how and why computers can be intelligent and creative. We need to understand with what we are working, where and when these things happen. We need to understand their, let me use an academic word, we need to understand their ontology, to figure out what they are doing to us, right? Because I don't believe that creativity or the creative act is that thing of the genius artist has an idea and then makes it happen in the world. No. Creativity happens in a dialogue, in an interaction with the world, with your tools, with the media you work with. So these things actually have a very important role in what we can imagine, even, right? The things we can imagine depend on what our tools allow us to imagine. We can put it in those simple terms. So, in that sense, I'm a techno-optimist. I'm also pessimist about a bunch of things. Obviously, I'm pessimist about late-stage capitalism, for instance. I'm pessimist about what Evgeny Morozov calls solutionism. So the idea that technology solves everything and that you can solve your problems by throwing more technology at them. I don't think that works necessarily. I'm very pessimist about the negative impact that this may have in culture, or on culture, sorry. And by this I mean generative AI. And the idea that everything can be approached topically, that you can ask ChatGPT to summarize the book into a simple sentence. No, that's not how books work, right? That's how proverbs work, maybe, but not books. You need to read them. I'm also pessimist about, Harari and Bostrom, you mentioned them, sorry, and all the doomsayers about AI, because I mostly see them as marketing tools for AI companies, right? Because if AI is dangerous, then that means it's important. That means it can actually do things that, for the most part, it cannot do. So it's interesting to speculate about scenarios, obviously. What if we have Gen AI or super AI, what does Boston call it? Artificial superintelligent, ASI. It's interesting to think about those scenarios. We should think about them, but we should also understand that when Boston writes that, he's actually advertising AI. He's actually advertising the people that funded his institute.
Which is not bad.
Yeah.
It depends on how you look at it.
As a serious ethical problem. Yeah.
Because there is nothing bad in advertising a tool which is helping a lot of people.
Sure, I agree with you. Exactly. When you use your academic position and you write your philosophical book, to use this particular example, but I could give you more, to actually philosophize about AI, and what you're actually doing is sock puppeting the people that fund you. That is ethically a major issue.
Okay, in this case, you're probably right, but at the same time, I would like to be a bit to implement a bit of romanticism in this, because I can imagine that at the same time, now I'm remembering about the time when internet was born. A lot of people were making manifestos how internet should be and how internet realm should look like, and there were a lot of advertisement of internet, in those manifestos. If you call it like this, you can call it like this, but it was not bad, because they were believing in this idea. They were really honestly believing in this idea. The other thing is that what happened with internet, which we have now, that it became a completely another place, a completely another idea, and completely another technology which they were thinking about it should be. And I think with artificial intelligence, also is a very big technology which is drastically changing every tiny bit of our life, is also not so straightforward. How can we deal with it from different point of view? We would like to build an ideal way of how we deal with artificial intelligence, and within this discussion we have touched the idea that we should have a world global someone institution who will tell us actually how it should be. But then I find it also quite frightening, if we pass the power to one institution, even if it's global, even if we find a solution how they, circulate the members of this global ideal institution, then still, it's problematic, when it's when it's monopolized, when there is a monopolization of
Maybe the problem is, as I mentioned a while ago, is the idea of universality and homogenization.
Yes.
The idea that you can have a single model to deploy everywhere.
Yeah.
A model that is used by, first graders in Europe, and is used, in the global south, and it's used by artists, and is used by scientists. Maybe that's the wrong idea.
But it's not impossible to have one institution. Well, we're talking about like idealistic, absurd things, but it's not impossible to have one institution that works everything out. It's difficult, but in the idealistic way. We were talking just about that. I think it's possible, but we have other things to other first things to address, and I think the idea of a global thing, we have to think if it's possible in the politics that we have nowadays, and I think it's impossible in the politics that we have nowadays.
So we need to change humans, actually.
No.
No, you need to think about the society. You need to think about how we organize as a society, because a global thinking, it's not just the case for AI, it's the case for the environment, it's the case for a lot of things. It's a case for housing, it's a case for poverty, it's a case thinking about in a global way, in a global perspective. It's in a multicultural way. It's more interesting than thinking about in a nationalist way, or even in a region, in a continent way. So if it's possible to address that in a political sense, then it's easy to address that in this kind of fields. But in being the politics as it is nowadays, it's impossible to think about an institution like that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for this insightful discussion. I have to stop our debates here. It was super interesting to discuss all these topics. I must say that
there was a question.
I will pass the microphone now to the audience. You have the microphone. I hope that you have questions. Let's delve into your questions.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you all for the panel. Very interesting. As I was listening to this, I thought AI, even if we just think about art and AI, it raises dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of questions. And when we have thousands of questions, we're probably not going to get many answers, right? So if each one of the panelists, so in you as well, had to think of, what do you think is the most important question that we as a society should work on and address when it comes to art and AI? The one question that would be the top priority.
Well, I'm going to be coherent and so boring. I think it's regulation. It's the most important thing. It's not just concerning the art aspect of it. It's everything around AI. So how do we think about regulation, and how do we get a regulation that it's not defined by the companies that produce AI? So this is the main
But
concern.
to be
for me.
specific, is that regulation about ethics? Is it regulation about the commercial model? Is it regulation about censorship?
Yeah, it's a regulation about everything.
But if we had to prioritize one, because if you try to create a regulation that covers everything, it would take 20 years.
Yeah, but
and it will be late by then.
I don't
So
know.
what is the
I think
censorship, or what is the regulation you would prioritize if you had to start?
no. I'm not thinking in that way. I can understand your question, of course, but I think this is a holistic thing. You can't. It's impossible to start here and leave the rest. You have to think this as a whole, and you can be more incomplete at the beginning, but you have to think it as a whole. And it's always so. There is not a phase for me to regulate, and that's it. And then we're done. Regulation, it's a daily thing. So we have to adapt regulations in the way that the technology adapts. So there are a lot of people that are specialists in some fields of the regulations. They can work that part together with other ones to create a large thinking about regulation that involves everything. That's the way that I think.
But I think, thank you for the question. But I think that it is indeed important this, mind game to try to prioritize what is the most alarming now, what should be the first, because indeed the issue and the problem with the regulations is that, it's not so easy, that we solve everything in one regulatory act and like tomorrow. It's impossible indeed. And moreover, the issue with the progress is, for example, me coming from the field of information security and cryptography and data protection, progress is based on the more data we have, the more data the new technologies can absorb and learn, the more progressive technologies we have. It comes to medicine, to medical care, medicine, and it comes to every area of our lives. And for example, the statistics says that those countries who are having the strongest data protection laws, they are a bit, with the technologies implemented in the everyday reality. They are not so advanced because of very strong data protection laws. So it's a bit controversial. We want the best, but then we are losing something in the progress.
We need a compromise.
So, please, let's keep on with answering your question.
If I were to keep it short, one thing would be around universal income or getting rewarded for our data that's being used. And as the AI takes more of our data, it might not need us as much to do certain tasks. So I think that we should be taken care of in that evolution.
When it comes to art, and mostly when it comes to artists and the art world, I think that the most important thing is to understand what we're working with and to embrace the strangeness of these things, so to speak. To start teaching people and teaching ourselves how to think about these technologies, not to think them as analogs of other things. Generative AI is not painting, it's not photography, it's not illustration, it's not even literature, it's something else. And we need to stop pretending it is those things, because it is not. Yeah.
So what would be the first regulation which you would...
No, this is not a matter of regulation, it's a matter of education.
Okay, so instead of regulation you have education. Okay. So I don't know, I think I have already answered the question from my side, so let's go to the next one. Yes.
More questions?
You mentioned education right at the end there. I was wondering if in the future your very young self early in their creative education would have benefited from some kind of AI tool. So AI tools to help young kids in their creative education. Could there be applications for this?
Sure.
Brainstorming, maybe?
Do you want the short answer or the long answer? The short is sure. Of course there are. There's a ton of opportunities for deploying technologies such as these in education, right? If for nothing less, because for a really long time artists have been learning through copying. I've been working with generative processes since the 90s or something like that. I've done a bunch of what you may call, nowadays I guess people call symbolic AI or good old-fashioned AI. I've done Markov chains, evolutionary programming, decision trees, whatever. I've trained generative AI models. I've trained, sub-symbolic things. And all of those things are really interesting on their own. The problem is not those technologies. The problem is how we are developing them and how we are deploying them, right? And this is what I try to teach my students. My students work with these things, but if they can train their own model instead, which obviously is very limited compared to what OpenAI has or the other big players, if they can train their small, generative adversarial network, then I'm all the happier, because then they get to understand the technology in a way that you don't if you just prompt it, And one of the reasons, I mentioned ethics a while ago, and as one of the reasons why I don't use, generative AI images, but the main reason probably is because they are so terribly dull, They are boring, at least for me, they are homogeneous, they are dull, uninteresting.
Yeah, this is exactly it is the question which was in the list for today evening, and which we skipped the homogenization
Yes.
of the visual heritage. But yeah. Okay. Any other question?
It's not so much a question, it's a commentary, but it'll be really, really, really short. It's just that it was mentioned here something really relevant, is that one of the things that the industry wants us to think is that this is all in the future. When most of the things we were talking here as happening in the future are already happening. This is like strategy, because as you've all said, AI is as much an idea as a set of technologies, and is the mix between these two things, the desire and the tools, that kind of gets us mixed up and is a bit appropriated. So this is not in the future first, it's in the present, and we should look at what are the real risks in the present and the real opportunities in the present, not in the future, now. That's the first thing to fight the industry. Second thing is, we spoke about copyright here, but there's another incredible thing that human societies in the West have discovered, is the toxicity of big monopolies. But somehow we forgot all about that. Because for the convenience, because it's useful, because it's going to cure cancer, but it's taking a bit too long to cure cancer, it's taking too long to solve climate change problems. This AI is a corporation, thinks like a corporation, is done for profit, and is a monopoly all over the world, held by 5 companies. We have never let this happen in the history of Western society. All we need to do is to go back to basic copyright laws, because we've also learned that, and anti-monopoly laws. But I don't know what's happening.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else would like to ask a question? It's very valuable, Yuri.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
For me, the progress of AI has been incredible the last years. Now it seems like there's some hints that it's kind of we're not getting the same speed, maximum acceleration. So I would like to ask an impossible question. When do you think we will have like a human intelligent AI? Do you think it will stagnate, or do you think we will have it, or will it accelerate?
AGI? Artificial General
I profoundly dislike the idea of imitation, and the idea that humans need to be the benchmark for intelligence, because we are far from being the only intelligent thing out there, right? There are many other biological systems that are intelligent, and there are even non-biological systems that are intelligent, but in very different ways. And we as intelligent beings, we can cooperate with those intelligences. So I don't think we need AI to be a copy of the human. Actually, if we develop it to be a copy of us, which it will never be in the first place, because of many reasons. But if we do that, we will most likely be wasting the potential of the technology. Because then we'll just be creating another human, and we know how to do humans for a while now. So, yeah, exactly. And we know how to educate them, and we know the pros and cons of working with humans. To add to this, artificial systems have been super intelligent in specific areas for a while now, right? Someone mentioned chess and Go a while ago. They are super intelligent in those domains. My wristwatch calculator is super intelligent compared to my arithmetics. That's the sort of thing we should look at, ML and large language models are amazing statistical tools, for instance. They are amazing pattern detectors. We should look into that, and we should take advantage of that instead of expecting them to act and to think and to reason exactly like we do. Because that will probably not happen. And mind you, I'm a physicalist. I'm totally a physicalist person. I imagine and I accept the possibility that from a strictly digital system, human-like intelligence may emerge. I just don't think it's the thing we need to do. So.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I don't think there is a similarity between the way that we think and the way that technology think, and it's just marketing or branding. We are drawn to that way of thinking, so it's very useful for the companies that are related to AI to present it like that. So we have this drive to think when it's going to be the time. And if you look at statistics, if you look at variables, there are a lot of things that in each statistical area that AI has surpassed the human thinking for a long time ago. So I don't know how to define the human thinking in comparison to the AI thinking, but I think it's two different things.
Yeah, back in '56, when McCarthy and Minsky and the other blokes were starting this idea of artificial intelligence, they actually proposed to solve it in 6 months with a bunch of interns.
They were really believing that there will be a technology which could actually algorithmically do the same thing as the human intelligence and brain do, which is, good. They didn't give up after 6 months.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just a clarification. You said it's just marketing.
The idea of you have to take a look at AI as a way to compare to the human thinking. It's just an idea of marketing. It's you have to believe in this logic, but it's not the way that the AI thinks the way that AI is developed, it's not any similar in any circumstances to AI, to the human thinking.
It depends. There are still some biological models that are still used, or biological analogies, if you want to put it in better terms, that are still used. The idea of the artificial neuron, for instance, the idea of the neuronal network, right? Those things are still there, and they are there because, well, on one hand, they prove to be useful, with some limitations, but on the other hand, because this idea of imitating the human is still very prevalent.
Yeah, of course, and it's important to sell as well.
Sure.
So if you take a look at a movie like Her, or nowadays the capabilities of ChatGPT to talk to ChatGPT as if ChatGPT was a person, it's impressive, and the idea is to try to bring the idea of a human to your pocket, to your technology, and you are, of course, drawn into it. But first of all, it's a marketing idea, I think.
You wouldn't think it was an idea in itself, like it was transhumanism or an idea that's come from the past, like it's an Enlightenment idea that's being projected into AI. And I mean, is it just? I'm curious. Is it just market? I mean, I don't believe it is. I think it's much more than that, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so pernicious.
Can you explain a little bit more?
It's just the idea. I mean, oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Just the idea that the short way of saying it is that we've been, since the Enlightenment, we've focused on the idea of the autonomous individual, and as we move on, the idea of some ideas of transhumanism, which were kind of knocking around at the beginning of the 20th century, have taken form to such a degree that, like, the head of engineering at Google is a confessed transhumanist. Zuckerberg is. So Sophia's saying, what is transhumanism? Transhumanism is the idea that we can perfect ourselves, we can perfect society through technology, simply put. So we can extend ourselves in the way that McLuhan was a transhumanist in many ways. So it's just a clarification, and I know I'm being a bit nerdy here, but when you say it's just marketing, it's just selling something, I think maybe one of the ideas that's kind of sort of lurking beneath the surface, like it's the problem of late capitalism, it's the problem of this, it's the problem of the data, it's simply the idea that the idea of the autonomous individual as seen through transhumanism is now being embedded in technology that we're then told is like neutral or just a matter of convenience, and actually it's really very ideological, and the roots of it are in Europe, and we in Europe we have a very ambivalent attitude, like going back to your positive negative argument. We don't really know where we stand on that one. But in the States, in Silicon Valley, and like if you see Silicon Valley being foundational and China being foundational, they've got very clear ideas about what they mean, and that ideology is being baked into the product. So when they're being marketed as technological progress that we need to survive, at the expense of everything else. They're being marketed to extend to escape death and there are no limits within that philosophy. The idea of a limit is taboo, Anyway, it was just
it's very interesting to
because I think personally it's a bit more than that. But I mean, I also believe that
but there is a relation between what you're saying and the idea of branding, of course. But it's very interesting, your thoughts, and I think there is. If you take a look at the AI development until 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there was a thinking that was more academic or more conceptual, but nowadays there are this urgency to get AI in the hands of everyone, so they have to simplify concepts. And I think this concept of look at this will think like you. This is a great concept, a simple concept. And this is not the opposite of transhumanism. It's not the opposite. But I think it's an intelligent way for the companies to address this in this way.
I think you have a point there. You know, it is a marketing thing, but it piggybacks on those ideas. It piggybacks on that substrate of our culture.
Yeah, resiliation, of course.
And it piggybacks on our, fear of death. Yeah. So
I think we are a bit running out of time, and maybe we can still have one more question if someone has it. And if no, yeah, no, yeah.
Before, in the beginning, we had a specialized, like machine learning, that was good at one thing, like classifying stars, creating new protein chains, or playing Go or chess.
Mm-hmm.
The general AI is a more general AI, and it's supposed to be good at more things. Like today, LLM struggles with mathematics and stuff like this, but it's still progressing. Like it's hitting it can do tests pretty well, But it's still not at the same level as human intelligence when it comes to learning new concept, and it learns more slowly. It takes more cycles, so to say, to learn an LLM, and much more energy. So this was what I was meaning. Like when I say AGI, I don't mean that it will think like a human, but it will come into the same level.
But the problem is that most definitions of AGI compare it with human, with human traits and with human capabilities. Right? I'm not even going there. No, let's not go there because we're running out of time. And this started in, what was it, 48, when Turing wrote his paper about, intelligent. Can a machine be intelligent? He didn't have another way to define it. And I understand why at the time he defined intelligence with imitation, imitating something that is intelligent. But this is important. He didn't define it as something that is and acts like a human. He defined it as something that can imitate, pose as a human, even if its nature is totally different, right? Which in the end is what Turing machines do. So it made a lot of sense at the time. The problem is how we then translated this into something that is a perfect emulation of a human, that is human, even if it's built and not born. So that's where the issue is.
I have another small comment with the tagging. That maybe we should tag the artificial images or whatever it is post. Maybe instead we should tag the ones that are human from the publication, because that would be much easier, Yeah. And everything else we should take like maybe it's human or a user, or maybe it's AI generated.
Yeah.
I think this is the future for the children that's growing up now, actually.
Yeah, I think that this will depend a lot of the ethics of the entities that provide stuff. So we have to be more aware of that. We have to be more critic, more some of the struggles that we have towards the state, we have to have towards the companies, and we have to be more aware that they should be transparent about the way they behave around AI. I think it's probably the best way.
I'm going to be egoistic now and have one last question. How do I find more information about where you're coming from? Because I came here by accident.
From Gerador?
Yeah.
So you can find it in gerador.eu.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to write it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to thank once again the participants of this discussion. I think we had a very insightful conversation, and I like that we were really involved in all these difficult questions which I tried to raise. And even though we didn't find the solutions, well, of course it was not the goal, but at least we raised even more questions, and I think this is a good outcome. And thank you so much for the audience. Thank you so much for being involved also and to participate with your questions. And of course, I want to thank once again Goethe-Institut and Tabea for organizing this event and other educational events. Thank you.